Can we settle on how Crosby, Stills, and Nash started?
No.
There's no agreement?
No.
What happened, Stephen?
He says he did, but I said, Cassie, why don't you and David sing those things that you've been working on? So we went to the table, and I picked a corner so that I could really hear the two of them. David sat on this side, and the other side, he roamed around and listened to us sing this very simple song that has one verse, three times.
And the song was?
In the Morning When You Rise.
It was a startling.
Dick Keen of his voice, his cat's purr, and my cement truck or whatever it is, just had this blesh that
That's blend and mesh.
That was, we could do anything.
It was absolutely, completely a unique sound. It was one voice made up of three individual strains of voice. There was no doubt. We knew what we had. We were in love with each other. We were in love with the music. We were in love with each other's songs. We couldn't wait to get out there. Get out of our way. We're coming forward. We were unstoppable.
We kept it very much to ourselves for quite some time of trying to navigate all the very delicate business negotiation to get releases and things like that.
We were on 3 separate record companies.
Yes. And so we had to play this whole little game. The minute that we got that done, we went into a very quiet studio and did not tell anybody, because one of the most disruptive influences on a recording session is an entourage showing up. So we went into the studio very quietly, and we had sung these songs to death. And it just happened like that.
You have to understand that Stephen played just about everything on that first record except the drums. He played lead, he played acoustic, he played bass, and he played
B3 piano.
Yeah.
I mean, Crosby and I played our guitars on, Long Time Gone and Guinevere and Lady of the Island and stuff like that. But Stephen played most of the instruments. So when we had created this album, when we realized we're going to have to go out and play live, what do we do with the man that played all the instruments? It doesn't work. So
what did you do?
We turned to a member of his former group, Neil, and I think there was a lot of question in our minds whether or not we wanted Neil in the band. And I remember,
was there a question in his mind whether Neil Young wanted to be in the band?
Yeah, there was, but he knew what we had too. Neil's brilliant. I came to my decision point about it. I was sitting in the driveway of that same house, Joni's house on Lookout, and Neil drove by, and he saw me sitting there, and he turned around, came back down, pulled out a guitar, we sat on the trunk of the car, and he sang me, 4 of the best songs I'd ever heard in a row. And I said, oh yeah, I want this guy in the band.
Well, I'd never met Neil Young. I didn't know whether we could be friends. I didn't know whether I could tell him secrets. I didn't know whether we could hang. I had never met him. So I said to David and Stephen, look, before we make this incredible decision, I have to meet this Neil Young guy. I went to breakfast with Neil on Bleecker Street in the Village, and after that breakfast, I would have made him king of the world. He was so funny. He was so self-assured. He was so certain that what he could bring, especially his ability to play guitar in and against Stephen, would be brilliant.
Neil is, a very unusual human being. He will do what he thinks is going to produce the best music. If he believes that it's time for the 4 of us to play, then he will come to that party and he will make that happen. When we started this, just to make one thing clear, we planned, the reason we used our own names instead of calling ourselves the Jetsons or Led Zeppelin or, the Giant Banana Centipede, we used our own names because we intended to be able to work in any combination, and all of us had in mind doing solo stuff. All of us, Graham and I, have always had a special relationship. We always intended to do Crosby Nash, and it's been a gift from God. It's been so good.
Well, if someone arrived and didn't know anything about your past, anything about your music, and said, what is your music about? How would you answer that question?
Everything.
Humanity, feelings, love, friendship, loyalty, support.
Justice.
Less crazy, less lonely. Maybe maybe challenge you to think a little differently about things.
Diminishing the space between human beings.
It's about here.
I'll welcome you back on here, and if you're new, consider subscribing, liking the video, and also share the video. Now, after this very saddening and heartbreaking loss of the musician, the popular guitarist Mr. David Crosby, who was the founding member of the band, namely or commonly known as Crosby, Stills and the Nash and the Byrds, who died actually on Thursday at the age of 81. The day prior, he went on Twitter to share various posts about heaven and loneliness, joking in the first of his posts on Wednesday that I heard the place is very, very overrated and very cloudy. Crosby was actually regarded as one of the funniest guys on Twitter, and Crosby's post was, as by the way, a response to the image that had been shared by the Twitter account of Stifler Mom says, which actually showed a screenshot of Google search for a phrase, "Can we go to heaven with tattoos?" So Crosby replied to that tweet and said heaven was really a very overrated place and cloudy. Those were his opinions, and a day after, we saw him actually passing on. The photo shows the top result, and people with tattoos will not go to heaven, people who drink alcohol will not go to heaven, and people who eat too much pork will also not go to heaven. Short people will also not go to heaven. So that was the search that Google sent in on that response of "Can we go to heaven with tattoos?" A founding member of the bands, the Crosby, Stills and Nash, the Byrds, and actually the leading guitarist of that same band, Crosby died after a long illness, and his wife came out on social media to announce on Thursday that he had actually passed on at the age of 81. Reacting to the news, Brian Wilson, one of the friends and a popular singer, songwriter, and co-founder of the Beach Boys, came out on social media, to be specific on Twitter and Facebook, and shared a photo via his official Twitter and Facebook, like I've told you, of him and Crosby chatting at an event. He continued and said, in a very touching and emotional tribute, "I don't know what to say other than I'm heartbroken to hear about David Crosby. That was part of what he wrote on Twitter." He continued and said, "David was an unbelievable talent, such a very great singer and a very great songwriter, and a wonderful person. I'm at loss for words. Love and mercy to David's family and friends." That is love from the one and only Brian. The guitarist John Mayer, also a popular friend to Mr. David Crosby, paid tribute with a black and white photo of Crosby, writing a very touching and emotional tribute. He said in his own words that of songs, now alive in songs, there aren't many people who moved the world as deeply and for as long as David Crosby did. The music he made will inspire songwriters until the end of time, an absolute purist. That was the message. He ended with an emoji of a heart that represents love. The Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young member Nash Young also came out on social media and penned a very heartfelt tribute to Crosby, who died this week at the age of 81. In his words, Mr. Nash Young said, "David is gone, but his music lives on." Young wrote, and that is the 77-year-old tribute, which he actually posted on the Nash Young Archive website. He continued and said, "The soul of the CSNY, that is Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, David's voice and energy were the heart of our band. His great songs stood for what we believed in, and it will always have fun, and they were very exciting when we got to play together. In this moment in time, all we can be continuing to do is to send messages of condolences, prayers to the family of the Crosby and the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young band, because we all know they are going through a very, very tough time. The funeral details we'll be bringing them to you here, and all we should be doing is to continue watching the videos as we'll be posting them. Rest in power the king, Mr. David Crosby."